Dillian Whyte is set to face unbeaten Colombian heavyweight contender Oscar Rivas on July 20th at the O2 Arena in London, live and exclusive on Sky Sports box office. Apparently there's been a mixed reception to the announcement of this fight. Many British boxing fans have never heard of Oscar Rivas before, don't know who he is, and are therefore assuming that he's some pudding who's been plucked from obscurity who can't really fight, and that Eddie Hearn is selling this show as mutton dressed as lamb. Well, I have seen Oscar Rivas fight a few times before. I do know who he is, and I can assure you that he's no pudding. This is not Tom Schwartz, for example, the guy Tyson Fury is about to fight next. No. Oscar Rivas is way more dangerous than that, and he's got a win on his resume, which is far better than any win Tom Schwartz has on his resume, just to put it in perspective, okay? Do not mistake this for a Fury-Schwartz type situation. Rivas is a 31-year-old Colombian based in Canada, who's 26-0, 18 KOs. He stands just over 6 feet tall, just over a 76-inch reach. He had an extensive and pretty decent amateur career. He beat Kubrat Pulev in the amateurs, for example. Also fought the likes of Glaskov in the amateurs. He fought Roberto Camarel, and he even fought Michael Hunter. Some of you may be interested to know. So extensive amateur career. He does have that pedigree behind him. And as a pro so far, his best win was his last fight against Bryant Jennings. Now, he showed his strengths and weaknesses in that fight. First of all, the strengths and the things that Dillian Whyte is going to need to be concerned about. Rivas has got fast hands, and he is a front foot counterpuncher. So he will put pressure on you, and he's got a very solid jab, by the way, a very fast, solid jab. These are the things he showed in the Jennings fight. And he really shut Jennings down through the first half of the fight with the pressure he was applying, with the front foot counterpunching, and with that fast, sharp, hard and solid jab. Jennings was intimidated to throw anything because the moment that he did and made a mistake, Rivas was countering with these really fast, hard combinations on the front foot. So that's something he does very, very well. And that's something Dillian Whyte's going to have to watch out for. On the flip side, in terms of Rivas's weaknesses that he showed in the Jennings fight, he's a bit of a plodder. I don't think he's got the quickest feet in the world, but then again, neither does Dillian Whyte. Also, Rivas is very heavily muscled. He is a shade over 6 feet, but he weighs from the mid 230s to the low 240s. He's ripped. He's in great shape. But I don't think that muscle is all natural. And I don't mean that he's taking substances that he shouldn't be taking necessarily. What I mean by that is I think he does a lot of resistance training, a lot of weight training to put that level of muscle on. I don't think it's a natural muscle mass that he has. Okay. And I think that that actually hurts him in terms of mobility, flexibility, and stamina. And that's something I saw in the Jennings fight because he was controlling the fight through the first half. He had Jennings intimidated, but in the second half of the fight, Rivas started getting a little tired, started slowing down, and that allowed Bryant Jennings to get into the fight and start winning rounds. And it was relatively close going into the 12th. But Rivas, we have to take note, did find a second wind late in the fight and managed to stop Bryant Jennings in the 12th. So there's strengths and weaknesses there, just as there are strengths and weaknesses for Dillian Whyte. I personally think this is a dangerous fight for him because Dillian Whyte really stands to gain nothing from beating an Oscar Rivas, but he's got a hell of a lot to lose if this guy manages to beat him. So it's a very, very risky fight. It's not like him fighting Joseph Parker or even Derek Chisora, because he had something to gain by beating Chisora. Chisora is a name in the UK, and he had history with Chisora. There was controversy about the first fight that he had with Chisora, that the British fans wanted to see that controversy settled, at least a certain number of the British fans. With Joseph Parker, he was fighting a former world champion, a guy who'd just been 12 rounds with AJ, a guy who was highly ranked. I mean, Oscar Rivas is in the world top 10, to be fair, but again, Joseph Parker was more highly regarded and well known. So he is kind of on a hiding to nothing here with Oscar Rivas. If he wins and wins in good fashion, people are going to say, Rivas was a nobody. Yeah, he had a win over Jennings, but Jennings was faded. If he wins but has a tough time, people are going to say, Dillian Whyte's not that good. He's never going to beat any of the champions. He's never going to hold a world title if he's struggling with the likes of a Rivas, a guy we've never heard of before. And if he loses, well, it's all of what I've just said times 10. So it's a difficult fight for him to win anything in other than, pick up the win for his record in terms of how the fans are going to perceive him and where it's going to put him in terms of his standing in the world rankings. I mean, he's already at the top of all the rankings, right? What does he stand to gain from this fight? They're going to sell it as a pay-per-view, and I guess they're going to show highlight reels of Rivas knocking out Bryant Jennings, etc. But at the end of the day, Rivas' best win is Bryant Jennings, which is a decent win. Jennings has only lost twice before to Vladimir Klitschko, and that was a gallant effort he put up against Klitschko. He went the distance, and Luis Ortiz. So it is what it is. I personally like the fight. I think it's a decent one, and I think it really is a genuine potential banana skin because Oscar Rivas will come to win. He's not a pudding. He is dangerous. He's got fast hands. He can punch. I haven't seen enough of Oscar Rivas' fights to be able to compare his power to Dillian Whyte's power. I'm not sure who hits harder. I'd need to see more of Rivas' fights, but he certainly has some power there, and the sharpness of his punches is impressive. If you watch the Jennings fight, very sharp combinations, when he counters on the front foot. However, there is one issue here, which I pointed out in a previous video. I did a video where I was talking about the potential opponents for Dillian Whyte in July. I mentioned Oscar Rivas, but I did say that Rivas has had eye trouble in his career, and that has prevented him from being licensed in several American states. Well, in the UK, the British Board of Boxing Control have got a very strict medical standard, and many fighters are denied licenses on medical grounds. However, in life, sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. And the British Board of Boxing Control allowed James Toney to fight in Prize Fighter several years ago when it was clear for all to see that James Toney must have had a brain like Swiss cheese because the guy can barely string a sentence together. He's so punch drunk. They gave that guy a license to fight in the UK because of who he was, and maybe because Eddie Hearn was promoting Prize Fighter. So maybe they'll be able to do the same with Rivas when it comes to his eyesight. Rivas has had multiple eye surgeries, I believe, for short-sightedness. I'm not sure if he's had a detached retina before, but certainly there's short-sightedness there, which he's had surgeries to try and correct. In fact, there's an article here from a couple years ago, this is from 2016, where Oscar Rivas was supposed to face Gerald Washington, and the fight was cancelled at the last minute because he couldn't pass the medical due to his eyes not being good enough. You see here? So will that happen with Oscar Rivas? They're definitely not going to want to leave Rivas getting his license from the British Board of Boxing Control to the last minute like they did on this show on Showtime a couple years ago. And obviously it's a different promotional outfit who were doing this show on Showtime. But Eddie Hearn will want to be a step ahead of where these guys were. Okay, you don't want to have the show cancelled at the last minute because Rivas' eyes are not good enough for the British Board of Boxing Control standards. So that's one thing we do have to bear in mind. And in fact, any of the journalists out there, the IFLs, the boxing socials, etc., they need to be asking Dillian Whyte and particularly Eddie Hearn whether they're sure that Oscar Rivas can actually pass the medical and, what steps they're going to take to ensure that that situation is resolved before Oscar Rivas arrives in the UK. Maybe get him to take a trip to the UK now, long before the fight happens. Or maybe they've already done it. I'm not sure. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about the announcement of this fight. Dillian Whyte versus Oscar Rivas. Will Dillian Whyte be the favorite? Of course he will, but it's dangerous. I'm telling you now, Rivas is dangerous. If I had to pick a winner, would I pick Dillian Whyte? Of course, because he's more proven. There are going to be some Rivas fans, and there are a couple Rivas fans in my Facebook boxing group who I'm sure will be picking Rivas to knock Dillian Whyte out. And hey, you're taking that leap of faith. Maybe you're right. Maybe he will knock Dillian Whyte out. Maybe he'll beat Dillian Whyte. But I'm going on what I've seen. You understand? And I've seen Dillian Whyte beat better opponents than Oscar Rivas has beaten so far. And although Dillian Whyte does have weaknesses, so does Rivas. So I would personally lean towards Dillian Whyte winning, but I would not at all be surprised if Rivas was able to defeat him and pull off the upset. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's happening them out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.